Influenza. Unfortunately, your textbook doesn't have very much on influenza. Actually, really nothing on influenza, and I have no idea why. It's an oversight, I think, in the book. But it's something that has to be covered in infectious diseases. So the flu, influenza, is a viral infection of the respiratory tract. And it's not the viruses that give you a cold. Those are rhinoviruses. This is influenza virus. Um, Quite a few people, up to 20% of people, uh, get the flu every year. Uh, it's not necessarily the same 20%, but uh, we've probably all had it, and we will probably all get it again at a certain point. Um, People at risk are children and the elderly, immunocompromised. You know, children tend to get it more often than adults, and it's a greater risk for them. And they get it more because of they are in crowded situations. They tend to not be as cognizant of hygiene and cleanliness and sharing things and that kind of thing. Um, and we tend to think of the flu as being fairly innocuous. Like, okay, it's like, okay, I'm going to be laid up for a bit. I feel like shit, but it's just the flu. What we don't realize is that hundreds of thousands of people are hospitalized for the flu every year, and tens of thousands of people die from it. Now, they tend to be people that are sick with other things or immunocompromised or really elderly, those sorts of things. But it can be a very bad thing to get the flu. Um, so the virus is fairly stable outside of the body. It gains access usually through airborne droplets. But people that cough or sneeze into their hands get it on their hands, and then it can be transferred to other people, and like on keyboards or on phones or on elevator buttons, that kind of thing. And then when those people get it on their hands and then transfer it to their eyes or something by scratching, they can end up getting it. Now, as I've said before, where you get the symptoms, because if these viruses are invading the respiratory mucosa and the killer T cells are killing the respiratory mucosa, then that's going to cause inflammation. That's going to cause leakage of interstitial fluid, because most of those mucosa are simple epitheliums. Most of the symptoms, the malaise, the flu-like symptoms that the flu gives you, are for the result of the immune system rather than the virus itself. Now, one of the problems here is that there's an incubation period. There's a couple or 3 days of time when the virus is active in your body before the immune system starts to actually kick up and start to fight this thing, and therefore give you symptoms. And you're contagious at this time. So there's an awful lot of people, and it's one of the reasons it spreads so easily, is there's lots of people, they go to work, go to school, do whatever, and they have the flu. They just don't even know it yet. And then a couple or 4 days into the symptoms, that's when the virus shedding is at its peak, and that's the most that you're going to communicate. And until it's all gone, you are communicable, like you are able to give it to somebody. I'm not so worried about type A and type B, but when we look at the type A, these are virulent, and they quickly spread, and they cause epidemics and pandemics. Now, the difference between an epidemic uh, is an epidemic is in a local area. So an epidemic will happen in Toronto, or an epidemic will be in southern Ontario, or just it's a localized region where a lot of people in that defined area have the disease. And it's an interesting thing right now. The disease, the Center for the Control of Communicable Diseases, actually has hired Google to track, and they're doing it by the number of people that are Googling the flu, and they know they can watch these things build, and they watch the spread of the flu by watching people's search engine searches on Google, and they're able to track it probably more accurately than they can from doctors' reports and things like that. Now, the type A really infects other animals, and the two other animals that matter the most are birds and pigs. Most flu mutates in birds. It happens that the virus enters the birds, and that's where it mutates and becomes a different strain. Now, lots of birds get the flu, and they don't transmit it to any other animal. But if the birds transmit that new strain to pigs, then pig physiology is very similar to human physiology. The pigs can transfer it to humans, and there's further mutation can happen. So a very common with these type A, these virulent ones, is that it develops in birds and then goes directly to humans, or it goes to pigs and then humans. And so because of that, they tend to start in places where birds, pigs, and humans inhabit the same space. So that would be places like Southeast Asia, where every household has one pig and 10 ducks and 15 chickens, sort of thing. And the kids and the pigs and the chickens are all in the same space. So like places like Vietnam and that kind of thing. And it used to always start, now we say it starts in Southeast Asia. They used to think that it always started in places like Bulgaria and some of those farming areas of Eastern Europe. And when we get these pandemics, and a pandemic is when it's the same strain infecting people worldwide. And we get pandemics of, every 50 years or so. Maybe a little bit more frequent than that. But that's the one that we're always afraid of. So in the 70s, there was one called the swine flu. We were worried about the bird flu as a pandemic just recently. There's right, the one before that was called the Hong Kong flu. There was a huge one that happened actually during the First World War that killed more people worldwide than the First World War did. And when you consider that the First World War killed 6 or 7 million people, I think it was like 12 million people died of this strain of flu, this pandemic of flu in the early 1900s. I think it was 1918. But in any case, that's the pattern, and so that's why you hear of bird flus and the chickens being slaughtered in Southeast Asia, and the Hong Kong flu and the swine flu and that kind of thing all seem to have this connection. The type B and C, less severe and more stable, they don't mutate as quickly, so they're much easier to immunize against. So how do you know? It's like you got flu-like symptoms, but everything has flu-like symptoms. So it looks like a cold. You have this respiratory irritation. You get a spike of fever, muscle and joint pain. Uh, I think of it as being like a kind of a 10-day course of action. It's saying here may last up to 2 weeks. I think that's fair enough. Now, one of the things that's really pathognomonic about the flu, it's not in this slide, but is pathognomonic, is that it hits you like a ton of bricks. Like you're fine, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine, then you're sick. It comes on remarkably quickly. Most other viral infections don't come on as quickly. This is literally people go to work and they're fine, and maybe at lunchtime or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's like everybody's like, "Oh my God, you should go home." Like the person's broken out in sweats and is really very very sick. I personally had it one time where I was fine, and I was over visiting a friend, and then all of a sudden I thought that I had food poisoning. I was like, it came on me literally within minutes, and I was sick in bed for the best part of a week from it. Now, there are complications, and one of the complications is that you become immunosuppressed a little bit, and your immune system you get fatigued, you get stress. It's a physiological stress, and you can get secondary bacterial infections, secondary infections like pneumonia and bronchitis. And it's actually the pneumonia that's the big fear in elderly people, in immunosuppressed people, in children. And pneumonia can take people pretty quickly. Now, when you go to the doctor for it, everybody hopes to get an antibiotic. If they give you an antibiotic, it's mostly to protect against the complication, against the secondary bacterial infection. But it's really not indicated. Antibiotics don't work against the virus. So it pretty much has to run its course. They try and prevent pneumonia, try and prevent the other infections. Rest and liquid are big deals. Kind of isolation all seem to work to a certain extent, but mostly you just have to ride it out and make sure that you don't die while you're riding it out. Now, OTC means over-the-counter. So over-the-counter drugs are for symptom relief. So if you take Advil, cold, and flu, it's going to help manage some of the symptoms. But it still has to run its course. It's the full length of time. There's a lot of hype going on about the antiviral medications, Tamiflu being the big one. I really have my doubts about the effectiveness of this. I think it helps certain people, but I don't know. The government really pushes flu vaccine now. This is a big deal because influenza is a big source of lost revenue. A lot of people get sick and they miss work because of it. It puts a big burden on our healthcare system. A lot of people go to the doctor when they get the flu. They go to the hospital. It really becomes a money thing for the government. So they're really pushing flu vaccines. The problem is that the flu vaccine, they have to predict what strain of flu is coming. You can get vaccinated, but it's that specific. So if you get vaccinated against that strain of flu, then you will not get that strain of flu. But if that's not the strain of flu that shows up, but a different strain or a mutated version shows up where you are, then the vaccine is not going to help you at all. They can't make it too far ahead because they don't know what's coming, and And they do it kind of on kind of a predictability basis. So they start looking at what people in Southeast Asia and Hong Kong and in Vietnam and Thailand and places like that are getting, and they predict that those are the flus that will eventually spread to us, to North America. And uh, if they're right, then the vaccine works that year, and if they're not right, then the vaccine doesn't work that year. Um, there's a lot of time and money and research goes into it, um, and it's still a bit of a crapshoot, you know. So these people feel like crap. They probably are not going to end up on your table. Uh, I think that you don't want to have them. It's even if it's not completely contraindicated. Um, they're too contagious. I think that it's a non-issue. You shouldn't be having those people in your clinic. So that's influenza.